Good morning. On this Saturday, we look at Psalms 37, 38, and 39. And of course, tomorrow morning, we'll have worship live at 9 o'clock from Mabel in Sutton, and then not online, of course, at 10:30 at our Savior's. And then on Monday, we'll catch up with what Psalms were for tomorrow. Psalm 37 begins with, "Do not fret because of the wicked." And I mean, don't worry about them. I mean, we can't control what other people do, and we don't need to try to fix what they do. And it says, "Do not be envious of wrongdoers." And again, well, sometimes these wrongdoers seem to, have it, or whatever. But the second verse says, "For they will soon fade like grass and wither like the green herb." They're not going to last. Everything and everybody is finite. I mean, we're not going to live forever, but, don't worry about what other people are doing. Worry about yourself more than anything else. The wicked will get what they have coming to them. So don't fret about them. But then verse 3, "Trust in the Lord and do good, and you will live in the land and enjoy security. Take delight in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart." Commit your way to the Lord, and remain faithful. Trust in God, and when we have that trust in God, there's good things that happen to us. There's bad things that happen to us. Life goes on, but there's no guarantees that when we love God, when we follow God, that our lives are going to be perfect. But we do the best we can. And then verse 7 is, "Be still before the Lord and wait patiently for him." And that "be still" is like Psalm 46:10, "Be still and know that I am God." It's just, be still and before the Lord and wait patiently for him is what this Psalm verse 7 says. And, rather than worrying about, "Why aren't you doing something, God?" or "Where are you, God?" you just trust that God is there. And I know I've said before that, people will ask, "Well, why doesn't God do something?" Well, God has done something. He's done many things. He sent prophets, and then he finally sent his son, Jesus, into this world. So God has done something. He has taken care of our eternal salvation. He's taken care of the sacrifices so that we don't have to do those sacrifices anymore. It's all taken care of. God has taken care of those things. And then verse 8, "Refrain from anger, forsake wrath. Don't fret, it only leads to worry." It only leads to evil, rather. Don't fret, don't worry. And again, that "do not worry," do not have, or "fear not" is, it's so hard not to worry. I mean, right now in our part of the world, we haven't had rain for quite some time, and the crops are starting to hurt. They're hurting from it, but all the worrying that we might do about it, we can't change it. We can't control the weather, but it doesn't mean that we don't worry. It doesn't mean that we aren't aware, but don't let it consume us that way. So it just goes on. And verse 20 of Psalm 37, "The wicked perish. The enemies of the Lord are like the glory of the pastures. They vanish like smoke. They vanish away." And we know what smoke does. There's a fire and the smoke goes up into the air, and you might see a plume of it, sometimes it's white smoke, sometimes it's dark colored smoke, but it goes up and it dissipates and it's gone. And, so this is just a reminder that, the enemies of the Lord, they can't stand against God that way. Verse 23, "Our steps are made firm by the Lord when he delights in our way." Again, that trust in God's leadership. And then verse 25, "I have been young, and now I'm old. Yet I have not seen righteousness forsaken or the children begging for bread." And I can relate with that. I was young. Yeah, I was young, and now I'm old. And the other day, I was in Jamestown, and and I went out to the pickup because I forgot something out there, and here's this gentleman loading bags into the back of his pickup, and he's a little older than I am, and so I asked him if he'd like help, and he looks at me, and his first thing is, so how old are you? And I told him, I'm 72, and he said, well, I'm 82, and this is the worst bag, and I just finished that one, but I sure thank you for asking, and sometimes we forget, as we get older, we forget that we aren't, 25 anymore, but our bodies remind us of that, and so I've been young and I'm now old. Yeah. And limits come and things are different that way. Verse 28, the Lord loves justice. He will not forsake his faithful ones. And it's just, reminders of who God is. And in verse 39, the salvation of the righteous is from the Lord. He is their refuge. And just again, that statement of faith, statement of trust, that belief that, God is there in all the time, in all the ways. Psalm 38, again, O Lord, do not rebuke me in your anger. It's, don't be angry at me, Lord. I mean, it's just, and it's a reminder to me that, we don't have this wrathful, vengeful God. I mean, we have a God who is abounding in steadfast love and filled with grace and mercy. But in this psalm, though, David is feeling the pain and the sorrow and the hurt and maybe the weight of sin and all that. Your arrows have sunk into me. There's no soundness in my flesh. There's no health in my bones. My iniquities have gone over my head, my weight like a burden too heavy for me. He's feeling the load of all of this stuff going on in his life. And as it might be sin, it might be the weight of ruling. I mean, you think about that as king of all the responsibilities, but he was feeling weighed down with all of that. In verse 5, my wounds grow and fester because of my foolishness. I'm bowed down and just weighed down by all of this stuff that's going on. And in verse 8, I am utterly spent and crushed. I groan because of the tumult of my heart. I'm ill. I'm sick. I'm sick because of all of this. This is how bad it is. And then in verse 13, I'm like the deaf. I don't hear. I'm like the mute who can't speak. I'm like one who does not hear and whose mouth there's no retort. It's try not to listen to all of those naysayers. Try not to listen to those who speak ill of you. Try not to let the worries and the world weigh you down. Verse 15, it is for you that I wait. It is for you who answer. And again, it's that in verse 21, do not forsake me, O Lord. Do not be far from me. Make haste to help me. So it's that plea for help, for guidance, for feeling that God is there, for knowing that. Psalm 39, verse 1, I will guard my ways that I may not sin with my tongue. And Psalm 119:11 is similar to that. Is I will treasure your word in my heart so that I may not sin against you. So, it's I will guard my ways that I may not sin with my tongue. I will treasure your word in my heart that I may not sin against you. And that's knowing what God would have us do. And I just had a conversation yesterday with a good friend, a businessman, and we were talking about knowing God and how so much of the world doesn't know God. And will there be a reawakening? I mean, when are people going to come back to the realization that we need God? That we've taken God out of our schools, and we've replaced it with other things, and we're in a spiral downfall. And when are things going to change? But I will guard my ways so that I may not sin with my tongue, or I will treasure your word in my heart that I may not sin against you. I mean, to know God is such a good feeling, and it's the leading and the guiding that God does to us. Verse 7, O Lord, I wait. What do I wait for? My hope is in you. And what do we need anything else for? The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. My hope is in you, Lord. My trust, my faith, my well-being, my existence is in your hands. And then verse 12, hear my prayer, O Lord. give ear to my cry, and it's, hear, give ear, and, this is when you don't hear real well, you make this, on your, to hear better. And, so lend your ear to me, Lord. Don't turn away from me. And as someone who has some hearing loss, I know that if someone is behind me, I don't hear as well as if they're in front of me. I've got hearing aids; they help a lot, but still, there are times that it's difficult. So lend your ear. Open up and be ready. And sometimes in large groups where there's lots of conversation and stuff going on, it's just kind of like I get overloaded and shut off, and then you don't hear. And so here in this prayer, it's, don't let all of the cries and all of the prayers of the people make you deaf to what my prayers are, Lord. Give ear to my prayers. And we trust, we know and believe that God does indeed hear each and every one of our prayers. And it's just, the Psalms speak to that and of that. And and we oftentimes I think, that on Sunday mornings I don't use the Psalms in the scriptures, and sometimes I miss that. And once in a while I'll put it in there if I got, if there's room and everything. But the Psalms speak to us so much, and they are the songs. And as I think about all of the songs that we have in worship, yesterday I was choosing the hymns for the month of August, and going through and looking at all of these beautiful songs that we have. Not only beautiful melodies, but beautiful words. And these are what the Psalms are, beautiful words of praise, thanks, and petitions to the Lord.